On this exciting episode, it's season 4 of Perry Mason and Bobby Redford comes a-callin'. Let's see what kind of title will start this new season off with a bang. Could I interest you in the case of the hateful hairpiece? How about the case of the revenging rug? Any takers on the case of the duplicitous pelt? You know that's not the title, don't you? It's Perry Mason, Season 4, Episode 1, The Case of the Treacherous Toupee. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple. Provide an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode, we give you a summary of the episode plot. We even compare plots with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel, if the episode was an adaptation. We give you a little trivia, reveal the episode's theme, and then revel in a Perry proverb. You know, a pearl of wisdom from the man himself. Finally, we head to the water cooler, where just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of our fave legal cruise adventures. But first, say it with me, to the law library! Each episode on the Law Library, we investigate some legal conundrum from our episode to see if we can find any precedents for future Perry cases. Today's conundrum involves a missing husband.
2 years is quite long enough for a woman to keep shielding a husband who has deserted her.
The details about proxies, corporation transfers, and the like. More of a deep dive than I have to say I'm in for. Maybe you want to do that research. The pertinent detail, though, is Bassett's only been gone for 2 years. Let's head to the stacks, where we discover that according to California Probate Code Section 12401, a person can't be declared dead unless they've been missing for, any guesses? Bueller? 5 years is the answer here. So Sybil kind of jumping the gun and assuming the dude's out of commission. Also important, California, the first state in the union to accept no-fault divorces, but that didn't happen until 1969. Sybil could have applied for a divorce from Hartley after 1 year, citing abandonment as her reason. Clear as mud? Great. Now let's get to the plot of this episode. The Case of the Treacherous Toupee. Hartley Bassett. He's a man on a mission. You know, like he's Ralph Duncan or something. When this guy calls for Sybil Bassett, comedic hijinks ensue.
Yes, sir. It's some kind of meeting. Could it be a sharecroppers meeting?
Share.
Hello?
Ha ha ha, shareholders, sharecropping, you know what she's saying. While Hartley's been away, Peter Dawson will play. He's taken the company and made it something new.
Domestic tool and die.
The what? Look here, I want the Bassett Tool and Die Company.
Our name has been changed for quite some time, sir. Whom are you calling, please?
Dawson, Peter Dawson. He's still the general manager there, isn't he?
Mr. Dawson is president of the company, sir, but I'm afraid his line is busy.
It's obvious Pete digs Sybil, and they're all gonna get together and share some money, and perhaps another merger, until Hartley crashes the party.
Now, since Mrs. Bassett has decided to use the proxy that her husband gave her in our bread and butter days...
Wait, you can't go in there.
Mr. Bassett! Looks like I got here just in time, doesn't it?
Back at the Bassett estate, Hartley is self-righteous, Sybil is sycophantic, and just for good measure, she's got Robert Redford for a kid. Did I mention this guy's got some news for his mama?
Richard, you've got to come home right away.
Not a chance. I just got married. And I know you must think it's awfully fast, but when you meet Teddy, when you see her... Mother?
It's all right, Richard. I'm here. I was just thinking that it never rains, but it pours.
Mother, you really come out with the odd ones sometimes.
Uh-oh, Hartley Bassett is cleaning house. Peter Dawson fired. Ken Woodman retained, but with a glancing blow at Ken's wife, who, well, let's let him share.
Besides, I still remember those bridge sessions Sybil and I used to have with you and your wife. We'll have to start them up again now I'm back.
My wife is dead.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, Ken. What happened?
Last year, she died by her own hand, I'm afraid. They wrote me a letter about it from Manila.
Manila?
It's apparently where she went, where she ended up. She left me sometime before that, disappeared. It was about the same time that you disappeared, Mr. Bassett.
Peter goes to Perry. Perry gets on a telephone.
Buy off Dawson's contract. The answer's a flat and final no. He doesn't get another penny.
Then I may advise my client to sue.
Listen here, Mr. Mason. Before I finish with Dawson, he'll really need your services. There are two sides of this story, you know. Colmar, how much longer do you think it'll take us to go over these books?
Another 4 or 5 hours.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Mason. If you'd come here later this evening, I'll be glad to talk this over with you. Yes, 4 or 5 hours. Say 10 o'clock tonight.
Stealing? Book checking? Meeting at 10 p.m.? Goodness. Perry's starting hot for season 4. When Perry goes a-calling, however, he finds someone's been a-killing. Bassett is dead, Teddy Hart is fainted, and Robert Redford has a case of the giggles.
He's dead. He's been shot. It's Hartley Bassett, isn't it?
Sure.
The dead man has part of a toupee in his hand. The titular Treacherous toupee. Guess who wears a rug? That would be Peter Dawson, Rutrow. Who are our suspects? There's Ken Woodman, the aggrieved husband. While on the stand and trying to withstand Perry's penetrating gaze, Kenny utters this amazing sentence.
Man changes after a while. Killing isn't always the answer to everything.
Somehow the controversial claim that killing doesn't solve everything gets him off. Question. It solves some things, apparently, Kenny? Teddy Hart, well, she's disappeared, giving Dick Hart a chance to have a getaway with another woman so as to dupe the cops.
Well, my name is Lorna Grant.
I suppose he isn't Richard Hart.
Well, what if I am? You've got it all wrong. This isn't my wife, Teddy.
These initials happen to be T as in Teddy, H as in Hart. Sorry, but the little game is up. Let's go.
We know the murderer's not Peter Dawson. He's the defendant, for crying out loud. We know it's not Sybil, a.k.a. Peggy Converse. She's too hapless. Nope, that just leaves Artie Colmar, who's been doing a little too much book cooking for his own good. This guy doesn't even get his scene in court.
Will someone please fill me in on Colmar's confession?
Della can give you a first-hand account.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this guy. Yes, it's the classic how to apply a toupee scene from season 4 of Perry Mason.
Under a microscope, each person's hairline is as different and distinctive as a fingerprint. It's like a shoreline with infinite and varied juttings and inlets.
I'm sure it is.
As we close the episode out, we've got more questions than answers. The one answer we do have, where is Teddy?
Getting married again.
The questions I want answered, which aren't, So, did Hartley run out with Ken Woodman's wife? Did we ever get a final ruling on that? And what's going to happen with the whole Peter Dawson Sybil Bassett merger? Is that going to happen? Number 3, how about at least a nod in the direction of Dick Hart and his heartbreak? Huh? Man, with that pun, we better get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. Appall is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive on an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Let's start with Appall. Dig the secretary at Domestic Tool and Die when Hartley Bassett comes a-calling.
Domestic Tool and Die.
Before the secretary picks up the phone to talk with Hartley, she's reading a book. A close examination reveals the book as Patty's Romance. Book number 13 in the Patty Fairfield series by Carolyn Wells. Published, I think, in 1913. You'd have to check me on that. Do some digging. Is this book worth a read, or is it a testimony to how dull life at Domestic Tool and Die really is? Ardella for this episode, I mean, you know, and I know, it's got to be Bobby Redford, Dick Hart himself.
Quit calling him my father. That guy's not my father.
Here's 10 about Rob. Number 1, born August 1936, Santa Monica, California. Charles Robert Redford. Number 2, got famous doing Broadway plays. In particular, Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park in 1963. He reprised his Broadway role in the 1967 film. Number 3, his 1960s stint on TV included, in succession, Perry Mason, Rescue 8, and Maverick. According to his 2011 authorized biography, Redford's grandfather, nicknamed Tiger, began to think Redford's acting might just be a legitimate profession when he looked at a TV guide, saw the Perry Mason listing, and Robert Redford was sitting there as a guest star. 4, he gained major stardom, Redford did, when he starred alongside Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That's at the tail end of the 60s, 1969. He moved into directing, and in 1980, directed Ordinary People, 4 Academy Awards, Best Picture, Best Director for Redford. Also 1985's Out of Africa, where he starred alongside Meryl Streep, 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. Number 6, of course, you know this guy, long connected with Utah. He actually married a Mormon and lived in Provo. He's one of the founders of the Sundance Film Festival. Number 7, various accolades, perhaps the most lauded actor we've had yet. They include Academy Awards, a British Academy Film Award, 2 Golden Globe Awards, the Cecil B. DeMille Award, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. If you want to contradict me and say we've seen an actor with more accolades than that at this point, let me know. Through season 4, Robert Redford, I think, at the top. Number 8, in 2014, this is less than a decade ago, Time still named Redford one of the 100 most influential people in the world. Number 9, let's talk some romance. 1958, Las Vegas, Nevada, Lola Van Wagenen, who dropped out of college to marry him. She was a Mormon. They had 4 kids together. The first one died of sudden death, infant death syndrome. The other 3 survived, went on to various storied careers. That wife and Redford divorced in the mid-80s. He is now married to Billy Shagars, an artist in her own right. He's been with her since the 90s. They married in 2009. And number 10, Redford announced his retirement from acting in August 2018. Our Perry for this episode involves our main man's vacation haunts. Tell us all about it, Perry!
And where am I going?
One of my favorite vacation spots, Carmel by the Sea. Oh, you'll need some expense money.
I bet Perry loves Carmel's scenic beauty, its vibrant arts and culture scene, and perhaps its stately courthouse, where he's defeated honorary DA Clint Eastwood in the lesser-known case of the lounging litigator that begins when a vacationer objects to Carmel by the Sea's pet-friendly policies. Intrigue. The theme for this episode, it's gotta be treachery. I guess wearing a toupee is kind of treacherous. I mean, people think you have hair when you really don't, but that's not a huge moral failing. Let's talk about Teddy, treacherous to her spouses, or wannabe spouses, aplenty. There's Hartley Bassett. You better believe it. This guy's a total schnook. He's the one who abandoned Sybil, and then he has the nerve to play high and mighty while demanding a drink. Good night.
Dawson has proposed a merger by marriage.
No, that's not true.
Sybil, don't pretend to be any stupider than you already are.
And what about Artie Colmar? The thing that cracks me up about this guy's treachery is he sells the company out for a measly $6,000. There's no backstory about a gambling habit. $6,000? He'd have been out of a job if Peter Dawson hadn't brought the company back from the brink of bankruptcy. He could have framed a lot of people. Nope, he took it out on the boss that actually kept him employed, and all for $6,000. Good night. Don't be treacherous when Perry comes a-calling. He'll make that betrayal pill a better one to swallow. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb, shall we? Seemed like someone plugged Raymond Burr full of downers before this episode. Pretty slow, pretty lethargic, even though he says his lines deliberately for the entire episode. This line is worth keeping.
I'd be careful of any accusation, Mr. Bassett, unless you're prepared to back it up in court.
Even at a slower pace, the guy's good for a keeper quotation every episode. Now let's sprint to the water cooler. I'm guessing we'll get there before Perry.
You know, there is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, I give you deleted scenes. All these deleted scenes came from listeners like you, two of them from the unofficial Perry Pod legal counsel, Tom Wiltshire. With Roderick the Wigmaker on the stand, Mason takes him up on the offer to grab away at his toupee.
If you'd like a test, Mr. Mason, grab away.
When Mason gives the toupee a little polite shake, nothing happens. Then Berger takes a tug, followed by the judge. The toupee defiantly remains in place. And then Trag grabs the toupee with both hands and rips it off. And smiling at the mangled wib, Trag says to Berger, "Look, it has my mark on it." Awesome. An angry Hartley Bassett, this is number 2, stomps through the factory screaming, "You're fired! You're fired! And you too!"
You're fired too.
Even strangers in the parking lot get fired, though they're not working for the company. And finally, when Mason and Dick Hart find him shot on the floor, Hartley sees Dick with a death-rattling wheeze and snarls, "You're fired!" before expiring. And here's from Tim Cree. We get a montage of Robert Redford screaming into the phone,
Quit calling him my father. That guy's not my father.
"Hartley Bassett isn't my father. Mr. Woodman isn't my father. Morgan Freeman, not my father. Della Street, not my father." All good stuff. Gotta love it. Our Paul prompt from the last episode of Season 3 involved Freud. You remember the case of the flighty father.
You see, in Freudian terms, Mother was what they
There are
call...
always two sides to everything.
He always blamed himself for not making things work in the past. You see, in Freudian terms, my father...
I understand, Trudy.
Well, Aunt Myra was hard at work tracking down where the Freud obsession might have come from. She found a quotation that said, "A mental health crisis erupted in the U.S. after the Second World War, touching not just returning soldiers, but people from all walks of life. The National Institute of Mental Health was established after 1946, and although few clinical psychologists of the era practiced Freudian psychoanalysis, they distilled Freud's ideas into buzzwords which appeared frequently in conversations, writings, and speeches. A probation officer, even a truant officer," the quotation goes on to say, "would discuss a juvenile delinquent's family background in the context of aggression and compensation. Freudian concepts saturated popular movies like Marnie and The Three Faces of Eve. Clinical psychologists and the public were in sync." Thanks for tracking that down, Aunt Mai. Now, let's hear some listener letters. Thanks so much to Anita and April, who sent notes about the Season 1 Defendants Tournament. I appreciate you listening. We got a specific letter about the Flighty Father from our trivia maven, Nancy, who wrote, quote, "I was struck by your comment that Perry is a father figure to Trudy. It reminded me of lyrics from the song Perry Mason by the band Susan's Room. The song says that Perry is like Abe Lincoln, like Atticus Fitch, the perfect father."
Oh, how I love you, Perry Mason. Oh, how I love you, Perry Mason.
Nancy, I had no idea the song existed. Thank you for alerting me to its existence. Delightful. We heard from Jason Lucky, who wrote, "I've been a Perry Mason fan for a long while, read all but one of the novels, have watched most of the episodes. I've even listened to some of the old radio programs. Youch! So glad I found this podcast. Thanks for it. You should create a section called Irrelevant, Incompetent, and Immaterial." I should, Jason. Thank you for that recommendation, and maybe we'll break it out here in Season 4. Steve Nelson wrote to say, "Over the last couple of months, I've been listening to your Perry Pod episodes of the first season of the show, and I'm finding it very enjoyable. I'm a boomer in my 60s. I watched the original Perry Mason television show as a young kid and have enjoyed it ever since. It's one of my favorite TV shows." Thanks for writing in, Steve. I really appreciate it. And then we heard from Bill Pierce, who wrote, "I live in California. My wife Becky and I have just completed all 9 seasons of Perry and have enjoyed several of your podcasts and look forward to hearing all 271 of them as they are completed. I work in Northern California on occasion, and today, on our way home, we decided to visit Raymond Burr Vineyards in Healdsburg, California. Unfortunately, as we're in the off-season, they are only open on weekends. We met the current owner who purchased the property from Mr. Burr's partner 5 years ago. Thanks so much for these letters. They were each a delight to me. It makes me happy that I am adding to your experience of a really great TV show. Next time, we've got Dick Hammond with a sick mom and a sicker friend. Dead bodies, we got them. And when I tell you there's a quarry, I'm not talking mines. Join us for the case of the credulous quarry, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!